From his hilarious performances to his sharp satirical paintings, Jim Carrey is no longer just acting, he's exposing the truth. Could his words change the way you see American politics? The Grand Liberty Hall studio, illuminated just enough by the stage lights, set the perfect tone for Truth Unfiltered, a show that carried a sense of seriousness without being overly tense. The audience sat in silence, eyes locked on the two main figures. The host sat calmly on the left, while Jim Carrey leaned back in his chair on the right, his expression a mix of mischief and seriousness. Chris Marshall kicked off the conversation. "What has driven you to share such strong political views recently?" Jim Carrey smiled, half-jokingly but with a clear undertone of sincerity. "I joke about everything, but what's happening in America right now, I just can't stay silent. Something is deeply wrong. I once said we're growing up in an era that teaches people to lie where lying is normalized. And that's dangerous. I see younger generations treating the distortion of truth as a game, calling it fake news, forgetting that every lie has real consequences. Recently, I even referred to the current administration half-jokingly as a rabid dog that's tearing the country apart from within. I know some people may think my words are harsh, but when you see the behavior, the divisive rhetoric, the hostility, I can't use softer language. This isn't a joke or some comedy sketch. It's a grim reality. We are being led by lies, fed hatred, and watching political decisions play out like someone throwing a boiling pot of soup in the public's face." Chris Marshall pressed further. "Can you elaborate on why you chose to describe Trump as a rabid dog?" Jim Carrey smirked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I know it sounds extreme, but think about it. A rabid dog attacks everything in sight, bites randomly, barks uncontrollably, and spreads fear. It takes no responsibility, no concern for the damage it causes. To me, that perfectly describes this administration. Every day we see attacks on the people, on institutions, on the truth itself, only for them to turn around and blame someone else. The sitting president, or more accurately, the entire team behind him, has fostered an atmosphere of confrontation and deceit. The truth has been twisted into multiple versions, and they insist that their version is the only official one. That's why rabid dog is the perfect metaphor for this kind of erratic, reckless, and aggressively defensive leadership." Chris Marshall continued. "Many in the audience are Trump supporters. Are you concerned about backlash from them?" Jim Carrey shrugged and responded instantly. "I don't hate Trump supporters, and I don't see myself as fighting them. I've always said, you can vote for the wrong candidate. That doesn't mean you're stupid or evil. We all have the right to choose, and we also have the right to make mistakes. The problem is that too many people confuse criticizing policy with attacking people. They think that, because I criticize the president, I'm somehow insulting his supporters. That's not true at all. What I'm highlighting is how this administration, specifically, how Trump manipulates facts and labels inconvenient truths as fake news, eroding America's core values. I stand with the country. I stand with the truth. If another president does the same thing tomorrow, I will criticize them too. This isn't about political parties. It's about right versus wrong, truth versus lies." Chris Marshall was intrigued. "You've compared Trump's presidency to a play or a comedy show. Why did you use the image of a circus?" Jim Carrey burst into laughter before explaining. "We're living in a literal circus. Just look at social media. Every day, new messages come flying in, personal attacks, policy declarations squeezed into a couple of rush tweets. It's like a never-ending performance where everyone watches, waiting for the next shocking twist. But this isn't some harmless entertainment. Every decision affects real lives. The president and his team's words fuel tension, deepen divisions, and even incite hatred among communities. Look at what's happening on the streets. On online forums, you can feel the hostility thick in the air. And yet many still treat it as a show. They laugh, they rage, then they wait for the next headline. It's as if they're watching TV, forgetting that real life isn't a sitcom. We all have a responsibility to engage and change the narrative." Chris Marshall pressed on. "You're well known for your political cartoons. Is there a particular piece about Trump that you're most proud of?" Jim Carrey nodded, his eyes gleaming with mischief as he answered. "I drew a piece where Trump is wearing a witch's hat, surrounded by flying monkeys, just like a scene from The Wizard of Oz. Sounds ridiculous, right? But I chose that imagery because I wanted to illustrate an idea. He's controlling an entire army of flying monkeys, a metaphor for those who blindly parrot his falsehoods, enabling his political schemes without any moral concern. In The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West commands flying monkeys to do her dirty work. And it seems like the White House today has plenty of those helping hands. When I released that piece, the reaction was intense. Some called it cruel, while others said, "This is brilliant satire." That's the nature of art. As long as it makes people think, I've done my job. Chris Marshall followed up. You once joked that First Lady Melania Trump should have added the words "rabid dog" to her infamous "I really don't care" jacket. Were you deliberately mocking her? Jim Carrey waved his hands dismissively, chuckling. I wasn't trying to make Melania the target. It was just such a symbolic moment. That jacket "I really don't care, do you?" barked outrage because it felt like a statement, "I don't care." And people debated endlessly, what doesn't she care about? Immigrant children? Her husband's policies? The public? I connected it to the rabid dog image because apathy goes hand in hand with recklessness. It's as if we have a rabid dog biting everything in sight, while its owner wears a jacket saying, "I don't care." It's a metaphor that's both funny and tragic. Of course, I never expected Melania to actually wear that jacket, but I wanted to create a visual jolt, to make people realize maybe we're all too indifferent, too willing to look away from the truth. Chris Marshall then asked, you became famous for goofy slapstick comedy Ace Ventura, The Mask. Now you're tackling politics head-on. Is Jim Carrey losing his comedic essence? Jim Carrey suddenly sat up straight, his eyes sharp, his voice firm. I used to be all about slapstick, twisting my face, going wild, making people laugh. That's what audiences loved about me, and I'm grateful for that. But there's more to me than that. I've witnessed major political events, from economic crisis to Obamacare debates to the chaos in the White House. I can't just ignore it. Comedy comes in many forms. One of the most powerful is political satire. Mark Twain did it. George Carlin did it. Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, they all use humor to expose injustice and absurdity. I'm just adding my own twist. So yes, Ace Ventura and The Mask will always be a part of me. But Jim Carrey today is also willing to use humor to make people think. I don't just want audiences to laugh, I want them to ask, where are we headed? What's happening to America? Chris Marshall then threw a sharp question. Should artists stay out of politics or should they speak out? Jim Carrey paused for a long moment before answering. I believe every citizen has the right and the responsibility to engage, whether you're a singer, actor, painter, or office worker. We all live in the same society, and we all bear the consequences of political decisions. If a bad law is passed, it affects everyone, not just ordinary citizens, but also artists, business people, even politicians themselves in the long run. For me, art is a powerful way to send a message. Comedy is even more effective because people accept laughter easily, then suddenly realize, wait, this isn't just a joke. It's the truth. Chris Marshall grinned. Do you think Trump will fire back at you with an angry tweet? Jim Carrey burst into laughter. Oh, absolutely. We all know President Trump loves Twitter. He's fired off tweets about everyone, actors, politicians, journalists, even world leaders. So I wouldn't be surprised if one day I wake up to see him calling me a loser or a washed-up clown. But like I said, political satire always gets a reaction. You take a jab, they jab back. The real question is, will he actually listen to the message behind it? Or will he just dismiss it as fake news and enemy of the people like he always does? Chris Marshall leaned in. You just mentioned fake news. How do you think lies have become so normalized in today's society? Jim Carrey let out a deep sigh. What scares me most is how people consume information now. In the past, there was skepticism toward the media, but we still believed in journalistic standards, in fact-checking. Now all it takes is someone yelling fake news, and everything is dismissed. If a story is critical of Trump, it's immediately labeled false. If someone presents evidence, they're accused of being part of the opposition. The result: truth becomes fragile. People no longer seek facts, they seek confirmation of what they want to believe. I call this the age of irresponsibility because anyone can spread any claim that fits their bias without verifying it. And worst of all, kids are growing up watching adults do this, thinking it's normal behavior. Chris Marshall raised an eyebrow. You've said that younger generations might grow up believing that lying is no big deal. What worries you most about that? Jim Carrey's tone grew serious as he spoke. Honesty is the foundation of every relationship, whether it's family, community, a nation, or international affairs. If we teach our kids that lying is normal, that as long as you have power, you can say whatever you want, they'll take that lesson into their own lives. Imagine a future where we have countless mini-Trumps, people who lash out at anyone who disagrees with them, who spread falsehoods without consequence, and who blame everyone else when they get caught. A society like that won't be a happy one. Violence, discrimination, and hatred will spread. And worst of all, no one will trust anyone anymore. That's not the world I want for our children or grandchildren. I hope people wake up and teach their kids to respect the truth, to question things rather than blindly swallowing whatever a powerful figure says. Chris Marshall followed up. Statistics show that America is more polarized than ever. Republicans and Democrats seem unable to find common ground. What do you think we should do? Jim Carrey lowered his voice, speaking slowly. We've forgotten that we're all Americans, that we all want happiness, stability, and security. But now, wearing a Republican or Democrat label is like saying, I'm your enemy. It's insane. I once joked, both sides take showers, eat, and use the bathroom, so why do we see each other as monsters? The key is listening. Don't be so quick to label someone unpatriotic just because they question an immigration policy or a tax reform. Don't assume someone is stupid just because they voted for a different candidate. Have conversations. Try to understand why they made their choices. And if you disagree, express it in a way that's civil, not by attacking or demeaning people. Personally, I criticize Trump harshly, but that doesn't mean I hate or want to destroy his supporters. I want them to understand that I might be wrong or I might be right, but at the very least, we should listen to each other. Chris Marshall leaned forward. You've compared America to the Truman Show, implying that we're all Truman living in a fake reality. Can you elaborate? Jim Carrey chuckled knowingly. In the Truman Show, Truman lives in a manufactured world, believing it's real. Everyone around him is an actor, every event is staged, and he's just a puppet for the audience. I see America today in the same way. On one hand, we're surrounded by television, social media, and news shows that shape our perception, making us believe this is reality. On the other hand, we behave as if we're in a performance-craving drama, conflict, spectacle. And Trump, in some bizarre way, is at the center of it all, either as the main character with us as his audience, or as the showrunner, orchestrating the chaos. If we're not careful, we'll get sucked into this show, believing everything we see, losing our ability to think critically. Like Truman, we need to smash through the fake walls, find the exit door, and realize, oh my God, this is just a damn reality show. I need to step out of it. Chris Marshall nodded before posing another question. That's a fascinating analogy. The media often jokes about Trump eating Big Macs while tweeting. Do you think that habit symbolizes something deeper? Jim Carrey burst out laughing. Maybe it symbolizes impulsiveness and a lack of discipline. Trump loves projecting a man of the people image by eating fast food, acting like he's anti-elite, but in reality he's incredibly wealthy and privileged. It's a contradiction. The fact that he's making major policy announcements or launching personal attacks while chomping on a Big Mac just shows how casual he is about running a country. It's like, I've got some free time, let me fire off a tweet. Done. That's not the level of thoughtfulness we expect from a leader. From a comedic standpoint, the image is pure satire gold. A supposedly serious world leader, perfectly groomed, surrounded by advisors, suddenly wiping his mouth on his sleeve, licking his fingers, then furiously tweeting insults at a politician or an actor. Chris Marshall smirked. So, what's your prediction for Trump's political future? Jim Carrey shrugged. I'm no psychic, but I think history will look back on this period as a time of chaos and division. Maybe Trump will drown in scandals or fade away like a reality TV star past his prime. Or maybe he'll reemerge with a brand new reality show. Who knows? What I do know is that history won't paint a flattering picture of him. People will remember him for his inflammatory rhetoric, his divisive tactics, and maybe even his record-breaking number of tweets. Like I once joked, in the future we might only remember him for his orange skin and the way his hair flaps in the wind. Chris Marshall continued. In Hollywood, many celebrities have openly opposed Trump. Have you faced pressure or received support from your peers? Jim Carrey nodded. Of course, both support and criticism. Hollywood is diverse. A lot of actors and directors despise Trump, but there are some who've supported him. I've received messages from friends applauding me, while others have asked, why don't you just focus on making movies and stay out of politics? But I believe artists have the right to speak their minds. Whether people agree or not is another story. I'm not trying to recruit anyone to my side, I'm just calling out what I see as absurd and unjust. And honestly, Hollywood has always done that. Remember Jane Fonda protesting the Vietnam War? George Clooney speaking out on humanitarian issues. Art and activism have always gone hand in hand. Chris Marshall. Audiences love your satirical paintings of Trump. Do you have any plans to exhibit them? Jim Carrey stroked his chin, smiling. A lot of people have suggested I hold an exhibition showcasing my entire series of paintings Trump, other politicians like Steve Bannon, Mitch McConnell, even Nancy Pelosi. These pieces are pretty intense, some might even shock viewers. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but I'm seriously considering an art event to raise funds for charity. If satirizing a president can be turned into something positive, something that helps nonprofit organizations, then why not? I don't just want to use art to attack people, but also to inspire goodness and social consciousness. Chris Marshall. Many wonder, beyond speaking out, satirizing, and painting, does Jim Carrey have any real solutions? Jim Carrey emphasized, solutions begin with civic awareness. I always tell people, go vote. Don't just sit at home complaining that the system is corrupt. You can make a difference with your ballot. No matter which side you support, do your research. Don't vote out of hatred, vote because you believe in a policy, a vision. Second, get involved in your community. Participate in local events, engage in discussions. Or just hide in your comfort zone, listen to different perspectives. Division can only be healed through understanding. And finally, teach kids the value of honesty. Show them the consequences of lying, how to fact check, and the importance of admitting mistakes. Let's not raise a generation of carbon copies of politicians who thrive on deception. Chris Marshall. Despite all the negativity, you still seem hopeful for America's future. What keeps you optimistic? Jim Carrey smiled warmly before answering. Because I believe in the American spirit. Let's not forget we've survived wars, economic crises, racial conflicts. Each time we've moved forward, even if progress sometimes comes with pain. Americans have a unique ability to self-correct and evolve. I trust the younger generation, if educated properly, they will understand the value of truth and unity. They're more creative, more open-minded about gender, race, religion. Right now, politics may feel like it's dragging us backward, but I believe we'll rise above it. The key is to never give up. I use art and humor to reflect our times, but you can use your vote, your kindness, your everyday actions to make a difference. Little by little, we can reclaim a better America. Chris Marshall nodded, then clapped his hands together. Thank you, Jim. This has been a fascinating conversation, ranging from sharp critiques of Trump to concerns about a culture of dishonesty to hope for a brighter future. Any final words for our viewers? Jim Carrey looked straight into the camera, his voice sincere. Laugh if you think I'm crazy, but don't forget to think. Don't assume everything is just entertainment. This country needs each of us, regardless of party, regardless of who you support. Hold on to honesty and compassion. Because sometimes one honest word can save a family, a community, and maybe even an entire nation. The stage lights dimmed slightly. The audience erupted in applause. The camera panned out, capturing Jim Carrey and Chris Marshall shaking hands. Chris Marshall turned to the audience, his voice unusually animated. That was Jim Carrey, funny, fearless, and deeply passionate. Thank you all for tuning in to this special interview. I'm Chris Marshall, and I'll see you next time for another conversation that matters.